60 seconds to comply.
I think you'd better do what he says, Mr. Kenny.
You have 60 seconds to comply. This is minute 79.
Part man.
Pod machine.
All pod.
This minute begins with RoboCop studying his reflection and ends with Emil watching That's Not My Problem.
I guess they're both looking at a reflection of the side. No, I don't have anything. But my first note is, it's really good to see you again. Such a great line.
Yeah, so Lewis, instead of commenting on RoboCop's appearance, as she does in the script, she takes a much more humane and compassionate approach of, it's good to see you again. You know, nothing about, oh, geez, what's happened to you? No, and who wants to hear that, right?
Well, I guess the last time she saw Murphy at all, he was looking a lot worse. Particularly with a hole through his head. Again, leading us to the idea of how much brain was there left over. But yeah, I think you got it right. Like, the compassion with Lewis is the lighting in it, because it's so soft and ethereal, and she's almost got this motherly kind of... She's shot almost kind of motherly.
Yeah. Oh, the way she's just sort of like... she's fussing with the bag, or fussing over him, or... I want her to look after me. She seems great.
I want Lewis to be my mummy.
Yes.
I don't think it's I'm not saying that's what they were trying for, but I think it's interesting that she has taken this caregiver role even after they've kind of tried to defeminize her. I think it's just an automatic reaction, but it is definitely more of a... she generally does seem happy to see him, and I do like that.
I think that also further serves to give her complexity. So you have your Vasquez characters who are just all butch, all badass all the time. But no, Lewis has these facets to her, and that's why I love it, that she's not bound by any kind of gender stereotypes or anything.
No, she's actually a great character. That's it. We keep calling her a great character. She's not a great female character. She's a great character, regardless.
She's just a believable human being, and in this minute, she's sort of like what a comedy straight man does. It's almost the equivalent of that, where the actual funny guy can't really be funny unless he's got the straight man to play off of. And in this scene, you've got sort of an equivalent in that you've got a tragic character, but that tragedy doesn't truly come across unless he's got someone to interact with and someone who can feel the things that he can't feel. There's
an old idiom that the best acting is reacting, and it's the comedy straight man is exactly that. You need someone to bounce off to really convey the scene. The comedy straight man does it, or in this case, the compassionate friend, if you will. I'm not sure if there probably is a trope for this. There's a trope for everything,
probably.
But we, as the audience, are looking at RoboCop through Lewis's eyes. So it is important that Lewis isn't joking, or she's not, trying to crack wise, and there's no banter. It's just a flat... It's not flat, but it's just it's an emotive, natural response.
It's sincerity, and we don't get a lot of sincerity in a lot of modern action or science fiction movies. I find that, the Star Warses and the Marvels and all of that,
crack wise, move on.
Yeah, there's a hesitance or this resistance to being sincere. Everything has to be punctuated with a joke.
Yeah.
And I love... That's why this moment is probably one of the most poignant and significant in this entire film. Because it's just so human and it's so real, and it's possibly the one time where we get a true insight into Murphy's experience and perception of himself.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to quickly bring up the commentary, one of the bits from the commentary just quickly, because it really does tie into this. And just these two brilliant actors acting the shit out of this. A natural instinct in some of these kind of things would be to play up the drama or play up the tragedy. So, like, you know, we have referred to RoboCop as a stoic hero. And I think it's very important that, in many ways, that Murphy is almost numb to this experience, is the best way to say it. Because, so the actors were trying to act and react pretty big. And it was actually Paul who kept trying to get them to tone it down. And I think the subtlety of their performance speaks volumes more than if, like, RoboCop was, like, doing the Vader no, you know. And even Ed Newmeyer talks about this and goes, like, he's seen similar movies that have done this, and, like, you know, when the real happens and then there's this moment of anguish, and it's like, for this movie, it would have been too cartoonic. And I absolutely 100% agree with the direction they went with this.
And I think this makes it true body horror to an extent. Or more aptly, I suppose, body tragedy. Because... well, okay. I listened to... There's a podcast called Script Apart, and it was an interview with John Spates, and he wrote the script for Prometheus.
Okay.
And he was talking about how he loves body horror, and he loves John Carpenter's The Thing. But he said, even though that's the first example anyone would ever think of, it's technically not good body horror. It's good horror, but it's not body horror. And he made this excellent point. You are never made to wonder what life is like for that creature, or wonder what it's like to be in that body. And RoboCop does this really well. It invites us to try to imagine the horror of his death and rebirth. We have been there the entire time. We are looking through his eyes in these very claustrophobic camera angles. It wants us to feel what he feels.
I think with The Thing, the horror aspect is the parasitical nature of the beast, and that you're curious as to who is infected and who is next to be infected more than you're worried about the...
Because once it happens, it doesn't really matter, I suppose.
I guess there has to be the transformative nature, has to be, I guess, consistent. Like, once the transformation happens, that it's permanent. It's not like transformation happens and then they get killed. I guess that's one of the aspects to it as well, because we have to still relate to the character for it to be, traumatic or empathetic. You got to empathize with it.
So something like a zombie, it's sort of body horror, but not really. Like when they're succumbing to the disease, if it's a slow thing, that is the body horror. But once they're just a swarming mass of zombies, it's just that's just horror.
Zombies are more about the dehumanization of people, but not the body horror itself.
No, there is one really good example though. It will stick with me forever. It was the saddest thing. Being Human was this BBC. I think it was a BBC series. It's a British series.
I've always wanted to watch that.
Really good, but oh my god, it's so heart-wrenching. It's the saddest thing I've ever seen. And there was one episode late into the series. So usually it's a ghost, a vampire, and a werewolf. And apparently there's a reason for that, because one time they got a zombie and she didn't last. So she was conscious. So she had just been bitten, and so the rest of the gang, they're aware of this, and they're kind of looking after her as it's happening. And she's still trying to live her life normally, and her ankle snaps. And she's still alive, and all this other damage keeps happening, and she's still alive. And it's horrible, and she's aware of herself dying around her. A reminder of that line from The Last Unicorn. I can feel this body dying around me. It's like, oh my god. Oh, Lord. And that is the only zombie story I really had a powerful emotional reaction to, because you're feeling her horror.
Yeah, wow. The thing is, I like this movie, but I think it's a terrible zombie movie. Warm Bodies is almost the opposite of that, where it's like, all that the zombies needed is love, and now they're no longer zombies. I was like,
weird.
Like, the first half of that film is really fun, and then it just gets Yeah. But yeah, no, it's making me think about other not zombies. It's making me think about
any movie that cures a problem with the power of love can go get fucked. You've just reminded me of a trope that pisses me off no end. So, like Christopher Nolan. Okay, fucking hold on. I'm just hang on.
Okay, no,
I'm getting my fucking soapbox. I'm getting my soapbox. I'm
go
climbing on it. Okay, yep. Interstellar. You take the masterpiece that was 2001: A Space Odyssey, and Nolan's like, you know what I should do? Make it about love and not about fucking hard science. So he does that, and then it's like, oh, time travel is possible because this man loved his daughter. Bullshit. No dad loves his daughter that much. I don't even care that he could be the best dad in the world. He is not breaking the laws of fucking space and time. Fuck you.
Anyway,
felt so ripped off. I was so fucking ripped off. I spent 3 hours of my life, and I've never. Although that TARS robot was pretty fun.
Yeah,
there was that. Cool.
I was going to say, yeah, the problem is no one's stopping Christopher Nolan from making 3-hour fucking films.
Oh my god. So anyway, I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it felt a lot better.
2001's a fun film.
Yeah, and there's a reference I was going to make to 2001 in my notes, which I could probably fit into now. Oh yes. So we're going through Murphy's thoughts in a way we never have before, because he's actually talking about his own personal experiences.
Yes.
And it's the first thing he wants to know is what happened to his family, of course.
Yeah.
But crucially, and you mentioned this in the last minute, he refers to Murphy in the third person as if it's someone else.
Yeah. I think that is so telling of where this character is at. It's something that essentially just gets ignored, especially in the later movies.
Yeah, it says so much with just one line, or even just one word, saying Murphy instead of I. There's dialogue in this. It's just, it's perfect.
Yeah, I'm just quickly looking at the script as we're talking about it, because it's even in the script is Murphy had a wife and son. What happened to them? Again, the phrasing is so specific. It wasn't I had a wife and son, or what happened to my wife or son, what happened to my family. He's so detached, and that makes it even more heartbreaking.
Yeah.
We know as an audience member that there's still this man inside of him and he's given the face as well. Something that becomes a bit of a plot point in RoboCop 2 is like, we have this human connection to this character, and it's still such a disconnect. It's like, oh wow. It's really powerful.
Well, what did you think of the line, I can feel them, but I can't remember them? Because he doesn't say, I can remember them, but I can't feel them. He can feel.
Yeah.
That is really interesting to me.
But we also know from his POV shots earlier on in the movie that he has fragments of memories about them, but
yeah,
how much of it is still there, we will likely never know.
And have you ever had those sort of semi-remembered memories? I don't know how else to describe it. Have you ever had those memories where, like, you might step into a building and you smell this particular smell and you go, oh, this is like... And then you can't put it into words. You've got flashes of images, and that's it.
Yeah, there's almost like, if we go to actually one of the true roots of, like, nostalgia, not the modern day interpretations, and it's one of those things where something reminds you of something from the past, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but it's amazing how our senses recall things just weirdly like that. Something a specific sound or a specific smell will just trigger that response.
There was actually it's one of my stories that I wrote. I felt like an asshole whenever I mentioned I came up with this idea.
Own it.
Yeah, I own it. Yeah, I'm proud I wrote a thing. But yes, this little girl's having a conversation with her android, and the android who has been rebooted and has... Well, she doesn't have any of her memories, or supposedly not, but then sometimes she seems to know things that she shouldn't remember, or particular preferences that this little girl has, or whatever. And so they're having this discussion about memory, and the little girl imagines this island of half-remembered dreams or forgotten dreams. Like they're in this little space somewhere, and they can come back. When you remember something, it's like it was always there, but where was it? And yeah, that fascinates me. I guess we'll never have any answers. But how does memory work that way? It's there somewhere in a file.
Well, it's funny that from a technical point of view, data fragments can survive a memory wipe.
That's what I was, doing in my story. But a human being kind of works the same.
Let's face it, we've barely scratched the surface of what our brain is, what it can do. We're still learning so much about it. And yeah, it is a Hollywood trope about like memories being erased and things still being there, or like, they've been erased so many times that they get full recollection. The one that immediately comes to mind is like, say, Wolverine. This whole idea that he has no memories and yet his past comes back to haunt him, and that's why he likes Jean Grey, because it reminds him of his childhood sweetheart and all that type of stuff. So I just don't know the how capacity, but it is interesting from a narrative point of view of a person that has these memories, has these recollections, but has no memories. I think that makes it even more tragic, because we know that he's experiencing these things, but he can't enjoy them to a certain degree.
Do you think that is something that OCP designed in him, or is that simply a product of trauma? That he is just so dissociated, you've ripped him from his life, his body, literally, so he can't process it. He's shut down. He can't do it.
I imagine, my personal canon is OCP, Bob Morton, just wanted to erase his memory and use his brain as a CPU. I don't think they really gave much thought about what happens if he does remember. And you can always say that this is still an experimental platform, so they don't necessarily know. Although, how scary is that idea of OCP knows how to wipe people's brains, and it never comes up.
Yeah, they've got technology and understanding of the human brain that we presently do not have.
Yeah.
So ultimately there is a limit to how much we can analyze this, but I think that's kind of the wonderful thing of when you lack specificity. It gives you a lot of room to actually play with the hypotheticals.
I think that's the problem when you get too specific in science fiction, where there's no particular answers. You're always going to box yourself in. I'm just going to do a quick divert to the future. I think that's one of the problems with RoboFlag, is that because they never wipe his brain, they set this whole fucking arc where he is still Alex Murphy, and when they erase that, well, they don't even erase that, they just erase his emotions, and it just doesn't work compared to this movie, where this is haunting, where this guy has had his entire life stripped away, and now he's remembering, and it's like gut-wrenching.
Yeah. And I think the crucial difference there is that they kind of tried to go a little bit more hard sci-fi in the remake, in that they were giving us specific answers to, well, what have you actually done to the brain? Oh, well, we're just dampening the emotions, but nothing else. And, well, the other problem is that, well, okay, this is
badly written.
Talking about real... Yeah, well, that. But in terms of real-world science, of course, there's no emotion part of the brain, no logic part of the brain. You know, it all comes together as a whole. It has to work together as one thing.
We have things that trigger things like serotonin and stuff like that, but there's no part of the brain with an on and off switch.
I find that technology has changed the way humans think of themselves, for better or worse, mostly for worse. And I think that's where you're seeing a lot more detachment from the body and all these body image issues that we're seeing so commonly these days. It's because we're trying to think of ourselves as machines, essentially. Even those who who aren't transhumanists, our expectations for our bodies and our brains is just so unrealistic.
Well, there's a lot to be said of unrealistic standards of beauty in fashion and the media itself. There's still biological things that we're only starting to learn about, realistically speaking. But yeah, it's weird how much we have this concept of what it is to be a person, and it's so, I don't even want to say distorted, because I don't think it's the right word to describe it.
Well, it's largely influenced by capitalism, I think.
Yeah.
That's one factor. And you're seeing this writ large in RoboCop, whichever version you look at, in terms of we are expecting a fully functional adult human should be working, 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
And they should just do that all the time.
Yeah.
And if you can't keep up with that, you're the problem. You're not good enough. Your body is weak. You are weak. You are not enough.
So I'm thinking back to like the 1950s nuclear family. You know, your life would be perfect if you have 2.5 kids and a white picket fence and a dog and happily married heteronormativity. All that kind of bullshit. It's almost like society evolves, but some people want us to put us into a box and be happy little minions.
And that's exactly, it's happening with, or especially the Amazon workers.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even bathroom breaks are undesirable. These are human beings. When did we stop treating human beings like human beings? And that's basically what RoboCop... I don't even know if they were aware that they were speaking to something that would become quite real in a few decades' time. In that, of course, unfair working conditions have always existed. But I think now... especially in the Western world, I think a lot of us, a lot of people, when they were watching RoboCop for the first time, you heard about sweatshops, you heard about all these horrible things going on in other countries.
Yes.
But in the Western world, suddenly people are having to work 2 and 3 jobs, although you can't do that in Australia because of taxation. But we are expected to be like automatons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you can't fit into that little mold, well, financially, you're screwed.
Yeah, it's amazing how many times they try and put a square peg into a round hole and then just hammer away until it shaves off the edges.
Yep.
I think this is something I was I brought up in the last minute, is that this is why I think RoboCop ages exceptionally well, because it's not about a particular thing, but it's talking about hypercapitalism. Even though I don't think hypercapitalism is maybe a term that was around in the 80s, but like the excessive capitalism was definitely a thing with the stock market crashes and like this hyper-consumerism through the 80s, particularly at the mid to late 80s. So it's dealing with these themes. Those themes never went away, and in recent years have only gotten worse. So that's why a movie like this stays relevant.
I was just thinking about, how a body is used, and that was going back to what we were talking in the last minute of all the different facets of how a body is used. But that's just from a male, white, cis male perspective, I think. And then you're making me think, then if you had a black RoboCop, or what if you had a female RoboCop, or what if you had a gay RoboCop? Like, does that change anything? How do we perceive, especially... we're actually talking about gaslighting when we don't have to. Oh my god. Yeah. What if he was actually gay? Would that change the way we perceive, tying into Maggie Mae Fisher's great RoboCop video essay, where she did a trans reading?
Yeah.
But converting the body, a gay body, that has a whole different kind of symbolism, I think.
Ooh.
Or neutering, even.
Well, I was going to say, from an external narrative point of view, gay RoboCop would never have been made in the first place.
No, but that would be fucking rad.
No, that's it. I was going to say, is actually that's something that you could have done. Modern day times is the idea of, like, rejecting some of the heteronormativity within the script. Like, what if not necessarily what if RoboCop's or Murphy's family life was a big deal, but then it's one of those things that We don't know about his family life until that point where he starts to remember. We don't know he has a wife and kids, but then all of a sudden he has a husband and a kid. It's almost like it doesn't matter that he's gay or not, because it's still the human story is still there and still strong.
Absolutely.
The one that just came to mind, though, is this would be great as a modern day thing, is what happens if RoboCop was female as an officer, she gets killed, but RoboCop is masculine because they want him to be this strong robot him body. So there could be a massive conflict in that. That could be the trigger. A body dysphoria as a trigger for what comes to happen. Would be an interesting take.
I love queer readings.
Oh yeah. It's as the token white het male in this cis het male.
Yeah.
I do love seeing alternate readings because it does broaden my view of the world, and frankly, I've seen enough fucking cis het male shit in the media. There's always going to be the next one. Give me something interesting.
And then I think we've talked a little bit because of Lewis being a black man in RoboCop and clearly a superior actor and could have been a really great RoboCop. But that would have been a lovely extra facet to that story, is how are black bodies used. And especially he's a police officer as well on top of that. There's just such rich stuff there.
Same again. What if they literally whitewash black black police officer into white RoboCop?
Because the face isn't even...
The face, it doesn't have to be Murphy's. It's just easier for them to get the actor to do it.
Yeah.
There's so many ways you could work this story and it'd be very new and interesting. But I was going to say, before we get into too much of the Robo Flag, though, I do have some extra notes unless you got something else to go on with.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, we should probably get back on track because I've got a few more notes. Well, one of them was, so Murphy's sitting there and he's contemplating everything that's going on, and Lewis says that, before we get to that, Lewis, and I think she handles this really well, that she's not telling RoboCop, don't look into where your family are, you should stay away. It's just, there was a funeral.
Yeah.
And they've moved on, and maybe you're better off, she didn't say that, but, better off keeping your distance and something like that. And, isn't that so heartbreaking? Family's there. Yeah. You could see them, but you would be too upsetting for them.
Even worse, you've come back from the dead. Like, they know you were dead. You were dead. And now you're just this monster wearing a dead husband. Again, bring this up in the next movie, because that scene is gonna be gold to talk about. Actually, there is a bit of alternate dialogue. I'll get into it now, because you brought up a great thing. So I think we've mentioned this in the past. So there's a subplot where, I think it's in the book more so than the script, what actually happened to Murphy's family. And the alternate dialogue is, obviously it's been cut down. This is Lewis. She signed on with Moon Corps. I'm not sure if you remember. She's got a sister living at the Lunar Industrial Plex. She thought you were dead. Murphy, I'm so sorry. So, I'm glad they tightened that down a little bit. Because, I guess having this whole idea of like, she's made a trip to the moon really does set it in the future, but I don't think it adds anything. And I'm glad they cut that out. Yeah,
and I don't know, it feels out of place in RoboCop. In other movies, it's kind of welcome. I had a little bit more world building, but in RoboCop, for whatever reason, it's better when it's pared down.
Yeah, if it was Total Recall, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. It feels more Total Recall than anything.
Yeah, get your ass to Mars.
But Lewis goes to put a hand on Murphy's shoulder, and you can sense her doing that. I guess he's got 360-degree senses or something.
Well, does he look through his eyes?
Nope.
Of course he has to.
But he tells her to leave him alone, and it's very human. Emotional response, but it's delivered in a dispassionate way. And here's my 2001: A Space Odyssey reference. It reminds me of how begging Dave to stop deactivating. It's like, no, Dave, stop. Will you stop, Dave? Dave, will you stop? And then he says, I'm frightened. And that line just echoes in my brain to this day. I'm fascinated by it because you just go, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
You know, when you have lines like that spoken by an inhuman character, I can feel them, but I can't remember them. What do you mean? What does that mean to you? And did you mean it? And yeah.
How do you experience this if, to quote Terry Pratchett, you don't have the organs?
Exactly. That's a really good way to put it. And I've been doing a lot of research into emotions lately. There's one called How Emotions Are Made. I read that a while ago. Lisa Feldman Barrett, she's the expert on emotions and interoception, that they emerge from the physical.
Cool.
Nature of the Beast is another one that came out more recently, and that's really good. That it goes much more in depth into specific studies, and interoception seems to be the strongest theory right now, that emotions begin in the body, and it's not a reflex. It is well.
That's how I would have imagined it would be. It's like pain receptor brain processes as ow, but nice.
Yes. So how he explains it is there is reflex, there is emotion primitive, and then an emotion. And trying to describe this as simply as possible, a reflex is, he uses the typical one of the doctor taps on your knee and your leg moves. You don't mean to.
That's a muscle reflex.
When you sneeze, your eyes close. You didn't intentionally go, I must sneeze. Now I must close my eyes. So that we observe in animals. And this is what that book's mostly trying to figure out, is how do we scientifically prove what we can see with our own eyes, that animals have emotions? How do we actually prove that 100%?
Anyone who's ever had a cat knows they get pissed off.
Oh, yeah. And so there's the emotion primitive.
Okay.
Which means it may not actually be an emotion in the way that we understand it, as having this complex, rich inner life and all of that. But emotion primitive is where this animal is responding to this stimulus and it is remaining after the stimulus has disappeared. Okay. For example, he uses a few different examples. One about cats, so I'll use the cat one because you like cats.
Yeah.
He has a male cat and a female cat. And the male cat was sitting by the back door, and a strange cat jumps over the fence, and they were hissing and getting so nasty with each other, and they're getting all, worked up, really emotional, I guess you could say. Then the female cat comes by a good 5 minutes later, and she's kind of looking around going, what the hell's going on? And he just flips out on her. He scratches her across the nose.
Fuck.
That is an emotion primitive, because he was still arced up. He was still on edge. It's not a reflex. He was maintaining the memory and the experience of what had happened minutes before.
This feels like one of those things where we would colloquially refer to as like our mammalian or reptilian brain, like instinctual level stuff. That's probably not what he's going for, but that's as a corollary to what we would call like a primitive response. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically, it's interoception, because his heart was probably still racing.
Yeah.
Everything about his body was in that fight or flight mode. And so I think, I haven't finished the book yet, but as I go along chapter by chapter, I go, oh, maybe emotions are this, or maybe emotions are that. So maybe emotions are a way of, that's the way the body communicates these commands or instincts or whatever, the programming, that's how it's delivered. And then in another way of looking at it, that's our narrative. Emotions are our narrative for those interoceptive senses, the calm, uncomfortable, excited, and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm getting into some real esoteric territory here, but hopefully that's relevant.
No, because I think it comes back into, how does that transfer to a creature, a organism like Murphy currently is? Because
Does he have a heart? Does he doesn't have skin. So if he is feeling anxious, where is that anxiety in his body?
I'm going to give you one hell of a segue because I said, like, his eyes doesn't necessarily have to see through his eyes, but I just want to get this in because it's it's from the book. They're talking about his eyes, and this was clearly before they knew what was going on in the movie. So she reached into the glove compartment of the cruiser and pulled out a small makeup mirror, handing it to Robo. "You still have blue eyes," she said, sort of. He gazed into the mirror. Indeed, his eyes were blue. But they also flicked with tiny red, blue, and yellow LEDs, which picked up information and fed into his brain center for analysis.
They had LEDs back then?
Yeah, they've had LEDs. They weren't as, they weren't as popular as they were now. But yeah, I think the LEDs have been around since the 60s or 70s. But either way.
All right. You know the reason why I know, or why I was thinking of this? Fucking Knight Rider.
You look like crap.
Fuck you, kid!
Yeah. No, but I think you bring it up a good point. It's like, as so far, the only thing we, as a viewer, know of how Robocop, for lack of a better term, sees the world is the eyes, because we've had a POV thing. So we know he has inbuilt functionality that we don't also have. Like, we don't have thermal vision. We don't have a targeting system. Which is probably a good thing for some people. And we don't have pitch perfect recollection through our eyes. But he also has to have a microphone somewhere to pick up the audio. And that looks like it could possibly be in his ear sockets, given the location. So for a body mass and shape of Robocop, his senses, like his sight and sound, has to be in his head to have the relative context for the rest of his body to manufacture. So yeah, it's interesting of how does this person view the world, and how does it relate to that?
Oh, that reminds me of a TED Talk a long time ago about inventing new senses. If we had technology that allows us to have echolocation or sort of a haptic feedback sort of thing, and once you start adjusting the experience, do you become a different being in a sense, or culturally do you become something different that is hard to communicate to other people? I think in the case of Robocop, especially over a long enough period of time, I mean, even though he's used being the operative word, he is a machine. He does a job, and that's basically, he's not interacting with people in a cultural way, not really.
No, he is designed for a purpose, specifically being a police officer with directives to uphold the law. They really didn't give a shit about him being sociable.
After hours and stuff, yeah. But, one of my novels I'm writing is, it's about Orca and Nautilus, and it takes place deep under the ocean where there's no light at all.
Yeah.
So it's technically, it's a story completely set in the dark. And so you have to try to imagine life as a creature that uses all these other senses, and how do you create a culture out of that, and what does this culture prioritize, and if it's not visually based. Humans are very visual. Everything's about aesthetic and all of that. If you don't have that, what are you prioritizing? And it doesn't really matter so much for Murphy because he doesn't care about such things, but if you made enough people like this, they would make some kind of culture we could never even understand, I don't think.
This is going to be a long bow, but please hold with me. There is a comic, I think it was in the 90s, a Green Lantern comic, where one of the Green Lanterns, I don't think it's one of the Earth ones, one of the Green Lanterns visits a planet, and it's like subterranean creatures, and they're all blind because they exist underground where there's no light. So, evolutionarily speaking, they don't have eyes. They're completely blind. They're moles.
They just don't need to. Yeah.
So, the Green Lantern ring, the Green Lantern light, it's a light-based power source,
right? And
which, conceptually, this species, particularly the character that befriends the Green Lantern, it could have been Hal Jordan, I'm not entirely sure, has no concept of what light is. He gets turned into a Green Lantern, but what he ends up doing is he turns the lantern ring into a bell. So he uses the Green Lantern ring and power set, but creates vibrations to craft his constructs and sees the world through that. So that's very smart and very interesting.
Yeah, and this is why I love science fiction. It can go in these places that can expand your perception of reality, and no other genre can really do that.
Yeah. Oh, God. This is one reason I love science fiction.
Oh, yes. So my final note is... Oh, I actually got two final notes. One note is on the makeup. I forgot to talk about the last one.
Yes!
We had a lot to talk about. It is incredible, and it's amazing that it looks more uncanny than the costume made 30 years later. And the magic of it is that they've built up the front part of the head. So the latex part, it blends seamlessly with his skin, and then it makes a very hard seam, and then there's the part of the skull, the metal skull.
Yeah.
It looks like it's somewhat smaller. And it really does... It's so effective. It creates the illusion it sets out to create, 100%.
One thing we didn't bring up last, and this is a fan thing: the disappearing chin, black part. Where does it go? Who knows? It just
true.
goes.
I just fell off.
It just sunk into the armor.
He molted. Yeah.
But no, I think Paul brings it up in the commentary that they bulked up his face partly because they wanted to convey the idea that beneath the surface of his skin were servos and things moving around. But it's one of those difficult things to do where you're trying to mold a prosthetic into a hard shell prosthetic. So what do you do? And I guess you can make the excuse that the black part is hiding all that raised skin. But I think it works. It works exceptionally well. And this is how we see Murphy throughout the rest of this film. So, yeah.
And it's not, there's no CGI. It is all just really good, I don't know, there's a word for it where you kind of build up or you subtract or just the playing with those shapes. It's this illusion of mass.
Yeah, the prosthetic work on this is absolutely amazing. Well, as much as it was a troublesome costume and that, the aesthetics are great. As cumbersome as it was, it still moves relatively well. Like, even at this point, Robocop can put his hand up to his head to take the bolts out on camera. And
this is the first time we've seen him interact with his own body. So when he first wakes up as Robocop, he's just a machine. There's no humanity. There's nothing there. And the visor, they've done some really great stuff with the costume and makeup in that it psychologically really does convey what it wants to convey. You start off with something that has no humanity. You see a mouth, but it's just not enough. The moment he pulls that helmet off, it's such a powerful... I would say that's a more powerful reveal than seeing Darth Vader. Well, except when he had the eyebrows, that was a bit alarming. But, when you see Peter Weller's face, and, it is a handsome human face. But it stretches back into this grotesque frame that is so profoundly unnatural, and you feel that horror. And I remember seeing as a kid, and that scene actually scared me. I forgot until just now. Yeah, it disturbed me in a way that I couldn't really articulate at that age.
But it's interesting that it's both a revelation of the human beneath, and it's a distortion. It's grotesque. It's so evocative because of that. It's
a powerful image, and some of my favorite production photos from this film are all ones of Murphy with the visor off, and this one, I might be able to track it down, and maybe if I remember to put this on the Instagram, but he's standing in front of the sort of, what do you call that, chain link fence kind of thing?
Yeah.
And the light, the shadow is on his face, and it's in profile, and I think it's just really powerful and beautiful.
Yeah, it's the problem is, if this would have been a modern day film or a remake in 2014, they would have immediately covered that face back up, and because it would have been cost prohibitive to constantly have your main star in the makeup tray and the thing and they're there. So it's like, it's one of those things you can get away with stuntmen and blah, 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 put the helmet back on. Whereas...
Side note, very proud of WandaVision for actually giving us Vision for a lot of it. I thought they were going to cheat and go, oh, well, he's just going to be Paul Bettany for 90%. No.
No, they actually actually went ahead and actually gave him the prosthetics and all the other stuff. And yeah, kudos for them. But no, this is the thing I was actually going to say. This is actually one of those Sam Raimi Spider-Man films.
I've heard of them.
One of the reasons they keep taking... two of the reasons they keep taking Spider-Man's mask off is because a face is more emotive, for starters.
Yes.
It's why the Power Ranger scenes in the first one. But it's also the fact
Although I like the little animatronic eyes in the new one. That's very cute.
I do like that. But it's also one of those things where having a fully masked face is great for when you got the CGI and everything going, but when you need that emotive response, that's why at the end of Spider-Man 1, he gets his face half blown up, so we can see the character. And also, you're hiring an actor like Tobey Maguire, and you want him to get buff and bulked into the costume, you have him in the fucking costume. And in Spider-Man 2, he takes his mask off when he's talking to Doc Ock. Same kind of reason. You get more expression of humanity that way, as opposed to if Spider-Man with his mask fully on doing the same thing, it wouldn't work as much. We have a connection.
Isn't that funny though? In the comics, it's a totally different medium.
Yeah.
But in an illustrated medium, so many people, especially racial minorities, I'm told, really related to Spider-Man because they could project whatever they wanted on this still image. They could imagine whoever they wanted under that costume. But
that's the problem. It's a medium, and comics are inherently silly. They are very, very silly. So, and you're not there for all the in-depth storytelling in Spider-Man comics were Peter Parker. When he put the costume on, he's beating up people in other silly costumes. That wasn't the drama. And we're going a bit off tangent, but yeah, I think it's really telling that RoboCop takes the helmet off, and now he's Murphy, and he's Murphy for literally right up until the last word of this movie. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, my last point. So he says, leave me alone to Lewis, but I'm wondering... Well, why did he push away her attempts to comfort him? I mean, what was the motivation there? Is that sort of his robotic programming of just keeping people at a distance, or did he just...
Yeah.
And so we're left with this beautifully framed shot, and they hold on to it for a few seconds, and that, given the pace of the editing in the film in general, it really stands out. You go, oh, okay, wow, you're really drawing me in.
Well, we definitely coming back to this idea of RoboCop, the stoic hero, and I think it probably plays into that. And
so RoboCop's left alone in an entirely artificial environment, and only his face shows any kind of humanity or anything of nature. There's nothing natural in this image, and even that face is debatably human.
It's artificial. Even last time we saw him with a real face, he had a fucking hole in his head.
Yep.
Which has magically disappeared.
But yeah, would it have changed the scene? Look, I just really want Lewis and Murphy to be best buds and hug, okay? But yeah.
Do you want to know how it would have been ruined?
Yeah.
If you read the script?
Oh, okay. Let's have a hit.
It's a little bit extended. So basically...
Like a Robocock, if you will.
Hey, that's my line. If there's anyone but Steve Allen, you're stealing my bit. In the original script, they pretty much doubled on the targeting system scene onto this moment.
Oh, yes.
So it actually, after Lewis backs away, it looks like it's RoboCop goes back to... This screams montage, because it's going to be RoboCop working on his body and fixing it back up.
Montage. Sorry, I had to say that.
And then it leads into RoboCop sculling a jar of baby food before moving on to his targeting system. Oh, I am so glad they didn't do this. Oh, I'm so absolutely glad they never did that.
Yeah. I was that weird kid who was always looking at the more... I always wanted things to be more realistic or darker when it doesn't matter what I was watching, it could be friggin' My Little Pony, and I was just thinking, but what if? What if? And I guess my Knight Rider fan fiction is kind of born out of that. Well, what if they really just went there, like went hard sci-fi, went more dark, more dramatic, and yeah, I think, at least to me, that will always be more compelling. And Alan Moore, he's currently doing this course, a writer's course, but I see clips here and there, and he talks about things like this, about really, there's one-dimensional characters, there's two-dimensional characters, and there's three-dimensional characters. And so the script that you're reading from, that's a two-dimensional character. He's just this machismo hero, black and white villains and heroes kind of situation. But a three-dimensional character has pathos, and he has emotions, and he has tragedy, and he has all those things. And so in a movie that is so satirical and over the top, when you have three-dimensional characters in that, chef's kiss. That is a beautiful balance.
Well, I don't think there's really, of the main cast, I'll say, not like thugs and stuff notwithstanding, but I don't think there's a single two-dimensional character in this main cast. Like, everyone's got something else going on.
No. Yeah, they all seem like believable people. I mean, they're big characters, sure, but not cartoonishly so.
Well, I think the only one who may be slightly cartoonish is maybe Clarence, to a degree. I'd say his gang are more cartoonish, but I think that helps them stand out, other than just being Thug 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, well, you want to hate them.
Yes, exactly. You love to hate these guys, but like, we can understand Clarence and Dick to a certain degree. We can understand the greed and the power that they want. That scene where they're talking together is great character building for two characters who may not get that in any other movie.
Yeah.
But we fight for RoboCop and Lewis because they're our two central characters, and we get their struggles and we get their pathos. And if it was a one-dimensional character, or maybe two at most, we wouldn't care for these characters. Segue into RoboFlag. But no, go.
It's as good as in the segue as any.
We
always ruin our segues.
I didn't mean to segue, but at the same time, that's one of my issues with the remake, is that none of these characters, I feel, have any true pathos, except maybe Sellers. You have more idea what's going on underneath him. Which is a shame, because these next minutes we get this great character dialogue between these two great actors.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Well, shall we get it? Yes, I think we shall.
Alex, how do you feel? I feel fine, Dr. Norton.
Minute 90 begins with Sellers awaiting an answer to the question in the last minute, and ends with a conversation between him and Norton, and that continues on into minute 91. So the answer to the question is, what's more powerful than a hero? A dead hero.
Dead hero. It's such a dumb line, but I kind of like it.
A villain? I was kind of... Villain?
Yeah. Live long enough.
They're gonna make... They got sequel baiting. They're gonna make, Kane, I think his name was.
Yeah, they really wanted to make this a franchise, and no. And at the moment we're recording this, speaking of sequel baiting, a particular movie got reopened into cinemas and bombed almost immediately because the internet made jokes about it.
Oh no!
Yes.
No, they didn't.
They re-released Morbius in America. I'm so glad I could give you this delicate piece of information.
That's so good.
I know.
So they went, it's so successful. People on the internet love it. They're talking about it. We must re-release.
And failing to realize that, no, they were pulling the fucking piss out of it.
It's Morbin time.
Oh.
So that means you liked it?
Yeah, they Morbin the shit out of that, and... What's funny is it played to more theaters than Fantastic Beasts 3, which has been out for a while and made less money.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that was out.
oh yeah, Fantastic Beasts has been out for like 2-3 weeks, and it made less money than Fantastic Beasts 3, despite being like double the cinemas.
Oh, well, it's COVID. Yeah, it's COVID. Blame COVID.
Fucking chef's kiss dumbassery. Speaking of chef's kiss dumbassery.
Oh, my heart breaks for them.
So my note for minute 90 is 2 great actors, 1 terrible movie.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
What I love about the next minute, so much bullshit between these 2 characters. Oh, good. So good.
Yes.
This scene's really good.
Yeah. So you got a conversation between Norton and Sellers, and it's probably one of the few scenes that I'm actually drawn into.
Yes.
If only a little. And I think, yeah, as you say, it's because you've got Michael Keaton, Gary Oldman. They play off each other really well. They're very confident actors. They're really bringing everything to this scene.
But it's 2 characters. Okay, well, so 2 actors playing 2 characters who are both know the other one is completely and utterly full of shit. Yeah. And playing it straight in the best way possible. This is where we were saying before about sometimes playing it straight is good, because you can see it in these 2 actors' expressions and reactions. They're just like, yeah, I know you're full of shit, but we're going to proceed on like everything's normal, because actually we get into the point of the movie we need to fucking speed things up. My one note is that they should have put this in a different location, because we went from one scene to another scene in the same physical space with just a slight bit of lighting. It's a bit crap. Change the location, even if it's just another physical part.
It makes it feel smaller.
Yeah, if they'd have started off the beginning of the scene in the same physical location but in a different part of the location, like Sellers in front of the TV, it would have given us a visual language that it was a different time. But him being behind the desk also kind of implies that he kind of stayed behind the desk.
If he had like a coffee table somewhere, and that gives you a little bit, it's more open, but it's also intimate at the same time. It's a bit more casual. It's conspiratorial, even, depending on how you want to frame it. And so the point of the conversation, well, they don't outright say. I mean, we know from the previous a dead hero. Well, they want to kill him off, obviously. But yeah, Norton's never told that directly in this scene. So
yeah,
I don't know how I feel as a script writing thing. How should we respond to that? And this happens a lot, even in good movies, where it's just like, I don't know, if you'd said that to someone, they wouldn't get the context. They wouldn't have responded that way.
I think this all. I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt. We know that Sellers doesn't give a flying fuck about RoboCop. Because all he wants is his army of AI androids to become the cops. So we have to assume Norton knows this.
So Sellers says, I'll face it, we've let him down, and you have made it so that no cop will ever die ever again. Saying basically, well, my plan was success, which is to say we didn't want RoboCop to be a success. That was the whole point.
Yeah. So I think it's one of those things where it's what isn't being said speaks volumes. I think how they act that way particularly well. It's that thing where I said both of these characters know the other one's full of shit. The fact that Sellers could promise Norton the entire Earth, he knows he's never going to deliver that, and that's why immediately as soon as he gets out, I'm not sure if it's in the next minute or not, but immediately picks up the phone and calls his assistant and don't let him be alone. Norton knows that Sellers is going to kill Murphy. Yeah.
So in this minute, Norton doesn't really argue. He just says, I want this family to get whatever they want and to be compensated for this, and I want my own research staff, and I want all this, that, and the other. Which, it's obviously just a play. He's just saying, sure, I'll do that.
I'm on Teen Omnicore.
Which again would be more compelling if we had followed through with, if Norton and Clara teamed up and there's a bit more character interaction there, and so he's kind of being our hero at the moment, and so he's going to be the one to protect RoboCop and all that. Yeah, there's elements of good things, as we always say.
This is going back to what I've said in the past regarding Norton's character. It's fine if he's ambiguous and we don't know where his loyalties lie, but we literally never get a sense of what his personal stakes is half the time. And it always feels like his emotional range is whatever the scene wants him to be. Is he supportive of Clara, or is he not supportive of Clara? Is he caring only about his work, or does he not care about his work? It flip-flops so many times. There's no real consistency. But this is the part of the movie where, he needs to switch the on button onto RoboCop so he can have the big battle, because they switched him off. That's literally the only purpose he serves now.
Yeah.
Again, getting great actors in to do terribly written scripts, Zack Snyder, doesn't automatically make your movie better.
So I guess this scene alone, within its own context, without its own context, it's pretty great, actually. I would think, this could be a decent film. It's just, everything that happens after that. So now I'm thinking, what would the third act be in the way we've written this story? If this is a story that's told about RoboCop and not from RoboCop's perspective, so it really is those surrounding, supporting characters that are telling the story, moving it forward. I guess it's more about Norton and Clara trying to get RoboCop away, and okay, here's an idea. So they're smuggling him away, however that happens, and putting themselves at risk to protect Murphy. And so in the end, he has to make that sacrifice of, no, they're not going to stop chasing me. I'm basically OCP property. Like, literally, my body, I cannot survive without them outside of this lab. So, I love you. Peace out. Thumbs up as he gets smelted or whatever,
That sounds familiar. I can't place it where. No, I guess that's the thing, is like, so we're 90 minutes into this film, and things are finally starting to happen.
This feels like second act stuff, but it's happening sort of at the precipice of the third act.
We are, like, say 10 minutes away from the big action scene, the denouement, all the stuff that should finally happen. And the movie is just finally remembered it actually has a plot. And this is why I think there's so much time wasted on so many things that don't do anything. I think you just nailed it there. Like, we could have had something very interesting and intriguing. I mean, I keep thinking back to the original movie. The end fight scene is between the hero and the bad guy who killed him.
Yes.
It's got a lot of pathos. It's about revenge. It's about power play. It's also lopsided in the way that, it's just this one guy, two people, one metal man and one cop, against a guy with very, very, very powerful weapons. And it feels more organic and true. Whereas all I remember of the Robo Flag end fight scene is just a CGI guy jumping around.
Because it doesn't mean anything. That's the huge problem. And I think a lot of modern movies have a problem with endings. And someone who is a bit of a 1980s or a mid-century aficionado, you don't get that. Some movies struggle with endings. Endings are hard, but my God, there's definitely an epidemic of bad endings these days. It's just, I don't know, big things blowing up. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, the Hollywood blockbuster really does not know how to end. Well, let's face it. One of the reasons they don't want to end a film is because they want to make a sequel. So they don't kill off the bad guys. They don't, or they keep.
Yeah, there's no resolutions.
or worse, they resolve the plot and then leave it wide open. You know, the 80s were... Well, the funny thing is, as much as I can think about it, the 80s movies that did that sucked. The two that immediately come to mind is Masters of the Universe and... Okay, they don't suck. They're fun, dumb films.
Yeah, yes.
But they have this, like, resolution, open end, which so they could get the sequel. But the movies didn't do well enough. Whereas the movies that just had self-contained movies were made well, did fantastically well. The only one that comes to mind that did that to a degree was like Back to the Future 2. But that was a sequel of an already phenomenally popular movie. So, yeah, they kind of deserved it.
Well, yeah, and Back to the Future was always planned to be a trilogy. So it feels like it's going somewhere, not this could go somewhere.
Oh yeah, the second one more explicitly so, like the idea of like the cliffhanger ending. But even then, it was still a movie that had a beginning, middle, end. All the characters had their arcs. There was a setup, a payoff, and a resolution.
Yeah.
And then the cliffhanger. But they weren't banking on it being, the first move. Okay, there's a cliffhanger in the first movie, but it's open ended in a fun way because everything got resolved. Doc turns up and they had to reshoot that because the actress was no longer available, but still. I love my popcorn media. I'm over this whole thing of open-end sequels. Just set up the next movie, move on.
Yeah, it's funny, the simple answer
set up
is,
in the next movie.
We criticize this media, and I think some people on the outside will go, well, why would you do that? Why would you waste your time analyzing these things so in depth? And you could be watching art house or foreign films, things of a higher caliber, which of course we do, but to me, I don't find them to be as much fodder for discussion and analysis. I think you can learn so much more by discussing things that get it wrong rather than things that get it right. I love Stanley Kubrick. I love David Lynch. They make masterpieces, but I have nothing to say about them. I don't think about them that much. I mean, I enjoy discussions about them, but it's not the same as... I would rather have a discussion about Ridley Scott. Some guy who is just balls to the wall, big old swing and a miss. You don't know what you're getting with a Ridley Scott movie. Could be great. Yeah. Could be terrible. Who knows? Depends which Ridley you got on that day. So, I think I love talking about these big blockbuster films because of their cultural impact. How many people have actually seen Mulholland Drive? Not many.
No, not many, no.
Yeah, how many people have seen Jurassic Park?
That's been on my to-do list and I still haven't.
Oh, it's brilliant. But how many people have seen Jurassic Park, for example? I think those movies came out around the same time. Everyone, and we're still making those movies. So to me, and I talk about this a little bit in my Tron podcast, what we're seeing is a kind of a return to the old way of storytelling where you just tell the same stories about the same heroes, your Hercules, your Theseus, over and over again. And
it's the Greek god, basically, hero's journey recycled ad nauseum.
Yeah. And so what fascinates me and why I dedicate so much time to these podcasts, multiple podcasts, is I want to discover, well, do major Hollywood films have artistic and creative merit? What are they doing to a population? And do these films have any kind of responsibility over the impact they have over the culture they're sold to?
Yeah. Yeah, those are phenomenally good questions. And, wow. I don't know how to answer that, to be honest. And I think that's one of the reasons I like using this podcast to explore the ideas about movie making, like talking about, like, I even bring up the denouement, mostly because that's a Tick reference as well. And 3-act structures and storytelling and stuff like that. Because, I think these are all great lenses that we can use to interpret what is considered to be like this dumb popcorn movie. But people who know this movie know it's phenomenally more nuanced. But just two things about... So this is one thing I hate about people who don't like people criticizing art or media and stuff like that. Because it's always the refrain is, well, why do you talk about it if you hate it so much? It's like, no, we don't hate this. That's the point. You don't spend this much time talking and analyzing something you hate. You talk about things you love.
Yeah.
We love media. I love popcorn movies. And yes, part of me wants to analyze where they go right, where they go wrong, the landscape itself, and all sorts of things like that. I do it because I'm interested in this, and I love them. I love the bad ones, I love the good ones.
Yeah, and I think... so, the RoboCop movies, to varying degrees, Tron Legacy, the Alien prequels, well, especially Blade Runner 2049, they're not dumb movies. They're not devoid of thought. These movies are not devoid of thought or ideas, but studio interferences, there's a lot of bad decisions, and so you're sort of getting a fractured gem, I guess. You're getting bits and pieces of something very fascinating and delectable, but yes, there is something good in all these films. And so, even though they are these big, major Hollywood blockbusters, it's not terrible. It's not devoid of meaning and significance. And that's what I want to tease out.
Yeah. I think the few times when someone has deliberately gone out of their way to make something bad, it always comes across as insincere. And, like when Tommy Wiseau realized that people were laughing at him and he tried to cash in on that. Yes, that's a great example. I say The Room works because it's very sincere. It is one weirdo's passion project.
His vision of reality.
Yeah, I mean, Troll 2, while it was a cheap kind of cash-in horror film, the people behind that weren't thinking, I'm just deliberately making trash. They were still thinking that we were just going to make some fun entertainment film. As bad as it is, there's a lot of sincerity, but the few times where I've seen people try and deliberately manufacture badness, doesn't work for me. It's one of the reasons I don't like Kung Fury. I find it cynical. I don't find it interesting. People call it a love letter to the 80s, but I don't see that.
Whereas Samurai Cop, hell yeah.
Oh, Samurai Cop. Well, Kung Pao is a love letter to the choppy socky kung fu kind that entire era. That's intent versus content.
Yeah.
And I find that's also intriguing. And I can't remember if I brought this up by the many times I got broken up. Two things about criticism. You do it because you love the movies. You love the genres. You love what it is. And you want to talk about it. Yeah, I was gonna say, the second thing is you can learn so much from bad media.
Yeah.
It is such a useful tool.
Oh, yeah.
That's why it's great to analyze bad media.
It's really inspiring, actually, and I'm making my own Ozploitation script because I've been watching a lot of those movies and going, oh, yeah, I like this and I like that, but maybe they could do I would love if they did this, or maybe they could do this better, or what have you. But I think we are the most critical of the things we care the most about. I think any family, they are arguing with each other and they're very concerned about how the other family members are living their lives and making personal decisions because you're invested in your family. Whereas if your neighbor is just making horrible life choices, who cares, right?
Well, unless their horrible life choices affect you. This is how we work.
True.
I've tried to do a musical analysis podcast because I love soundtracks, but I'm not invested enough in music to make those analytical choices, and I don't have anything to say.
Yes.
It's not my thing.
Yeah, we discuss the things... Yeah, I never thought... But yeah, I think we've both done that in our podcasting careers. It's always... things that are kind of... There's some good, there's some bad. If it's all good or if it's all bad, there's just nothing to say.
I would guest on Rise of Skywalker Minute if I was asked, because I have things to say about the movie. Would I make a Rise of the Skywalker Minute podcast? hell no. Because I wouldn't have... I don't sure if I had the sustained bile, but also we've done RoboFlag for 90 minutes. But that's because I'm talking about RoboCop, and I have a love of RoboCop, and I could speak to the end of days about RoboCop. And we almost have.
And, it's funny, we're talking about this, and yet I would actually argue that RoboCop is a perfect movie. I don't think I found anything wrong with RoboCop. But why it's so good for discussion is that it looks like a bad movie. It's dressed like a bad movie. And that is the delightful thing about it.
Yeah, it's one of those... That's it. I keep bringing up it. People think of it as a cheap, trashy 80s action film.
Yep.
It kind of is, but it's got so much working underneath the surface. That
it's in B-grade drag. It's an A+ film in B-grade drag.
Oh, that is a great description. I'm writing that one down.
You're welcome. I am a wordsmith.
But it is true. I think that's why it is interesting, is that if you just gave this kind of movie to, I don't know, any kind of schlocky director, like, Sam Raimi could make an interesting RoboCop film, but it wouldn't have this depth.
That would be fun, though.
Yeah, this is no shade on Sam Raimi, but this particular era of Sam Raimi, the horror genre of Sam Raimi, he could have made an interesting RoboCop film. He wouldn't have this depth.
No.
It takes a craftsman like Verhoeven to see the potential. Well, it took his wife to see the potential.
Yes.
And craft something, not necessarily timeless, but eternal? I don't know.
Yes. Eternal.
Yeah.
Forever. RoboCop forever.
Yeah.
That's the one with the nipples.
Yeah, the problem is we then have to have RoboCop and Robin.
RoboCops and Robots? That kind of sounds like... Yeah,
I love that you immediately also went to the nipples too. Couple of lug nuts. Oh, spin my nipple nuts and send me to Alaska. Shall we conclude this cacophony while I still have connection?
Yes, so where can the lovely listeners find you?
You can find me at Helios Photos and Fandom Crossing. I have occasionally, maybe one day, sometime, potentially, hopefully, make Kung Pao Enter the Minute.
Kung Fu Panda, oh shit, yeah.
Kung Fu Panda Enter the Dragon. Fuck, what the fuck is wrong with me? And where can the lovely viewers find you?
Find me at traviandesigns.com, patreon.com/traviandesigns, The Greatest Regeneration on Instagram, and Courtney Colson on YouTube. And if you want more of us, then head on over to Simplecast, Spotify. We're also on YouTube. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. It's a bit lonely over there. Please keep us company.
Yeah.
And
just us and the tumbleweeds.
Leave us a review on iTunes if you like what we do, or if you don't like what we do. Let's
shit.
just start a fight on iTunes, okay?
Yes. Internet beef.
Yeah.
With more successful podcasts than us.
And until next time.
Is it bad that my RoboCop looks exactly the same in the mirror?